I'm JoAnna Martin O'Reilly, the granddaughter of Moses Jackson Lott.
I'm Martha Stovall. My maiden name was Tippins, and I'm the great-granddaughter of Steve and Etna Canada.
My name is Shirley Wyatt, and I have lived in this community all my life, and have known these two ladies, you know, of
Right.
them, through them, about them for I can't remember how long.
Okay,
A long
and
time.
did you all grow up in Beeville?
Yes.
Yes.
So you've all known of you've all known of each other all your lives, pretty much,
Yes.
since you've been
I
together.
was born and raised here. When my husband graduated high school, he joined the Air Force, and when we got married, I did not live in Texas for approximately 50 years. But about 12 years ago, we decided we had had enough of Maryland's cold and snow, and we were coming back to Texas. So we moved back.
And to Beeville because the base was here.
Oh, no.
Just
The
coming
base
home.
was closed when we moved back, and we don't live in Beeville. We actually live in Livernia, which is near San Antonio, because the bases and everything are all situated about 20 to 25 miles from where we live, so we have easy access to the commissary, to the hospitals, to all the facilities.
And Martha, did you grow up here?
Yes, I've been here all my life. Never have lived anywhere but Beeville.
What was growing up like here for y'all?
To me, it was a lot of fun. I was a big tomboy at that time because on this side of town, I happened to be the only black girl. I have 3 brothers and my cousins. Most of you may know Jesse Robinson. He's my cousin, and they used to live right across there where the Bethlehem Baptist Church is located now. They lived there. So all of the people I had to play with were males. So I climbed trees, played cowboys and Indians, jumped out of trees, did everything they did until I became 12, and my older brother said, "You have to be a young lady now, so no more cowboys and Indians, no more tree climbing and jumping. You have to learn to be a young lady." So it all came to an end. My older brother was 8 years older than I am, so I had to listen.
And Martha, how about you?
Well, I have one brother, and we mostly played with each other, my brother and I. So I was on the tomboy side too, and it was a happy time. We lived on this side of town. It was called Sandridge, and so we lived on Sandridge, you know. So this is where we were most of the time over here playing with each other, and it was just a fun time. We didn't know we had a creek behind the house, so we would play in the creek. We would take a pasteboard box and split it open, and all the kids would come to our house because we could slide down into the creek. It was like on a hill, and slide down into the creek. So it was just a fun time, and we made fun out of little things where you have to go out and spend money on things now for these kids. Toys, it wasn't like that.
No.
You know, we played with that pasteboard box, and it was happy time. We looked for that. Marbles, jacks, checkers, that was our thing. We were in heaven.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated, you know. I'm fascinated every time I'm around you ladies. And, you know, I've had the tour of the museum and everything. How'd your families get to Beeville?
Well, from what I was told, my grandfather was originally on a plantation in Goliad that was owned by the Lott family. He married my grandmother, who also lived in Goliad at that time. And my great-grandparents, my great-grandmother, they actually started the Mount Moriah Baptist Church in Goliad, Texas, which is still standing, by the way. But they moved to Beeville after they married and bought property a block over from here. They had a total of 14 children. They had 4 girls and 10 boys, and my mother was number 13 of the 14. And I mean, when they were growing up, there was no school for black children in Beeville. My grandfather was what you call a mulatto, and my grandmother was about my complexion. But my grandfather could read and write, but my grandmother could not. And she wanted all of her children to be educated. So she told my grandfather that he had to talk to the people in Beeville, the higher ups, to see if we could, if they could build a school for black children. And at the time that they did that, my grandfather's sister was married to Martha's grandfather, Mr. Allen Canada. My Aunt Betty was his first wife, and they had 6 children together. And the first school was located about almost a half a block down the street from here. And it was a wooden building, and that's where they attended school. Mm-hmm. And some of my aunts and uncles went to college. In fact, 2 of my aunts were teachers, and one of my aunts, her picture's up on the wall over there. She taught here at Lott, Canada, and then she married a guy that worked for Southern Pacific, and she moved to El Paso.
When did your parents come to Beeville? What year?
I do not know what year my grandparents came to Beeville, because I wasn't born until 1940, but I believe they came to Beeville around 1870.
Wow. Wow. That's
As freed, were they?
Yes, after the slaves were
emancipation.
freed, yes.
And they came from?
They came from Goliad, Texas, which is 30 miles from here.
yeah. Yeah. That is great. Martha? How did your folks get here?
Okay, they were brought here as slaves, and Dr. George Cox was the one that owned them at that time, and they brought them here. They were brought to Beeville in 1857, was the year that they have on record that they were brought here to Beeville. And they settled here. They were the first to settle, the first African Americans settled here in B County.
As freed?
They were brought as slaves, and he gave them freedom after they got here a few years later, but they refused to leave him because he was so good to them. So they continued to work for him. And then they slowly, got on their own, but he was so good to them, they decided that they wanted to stay.
Is that family here as well? Still?
But Cox, I'm not sure if any of the descendants, I know we have Cox here, I don't know if they're.
Coxes?
Mhm.
Yeah, I know there. I think there are some descendants. They're dwindling fast, but I think there are some Cox descendants still here.
So what would the next generation have been like after, maybe the next generation didn't want to stay with the Cox?
Well, they moved on after years passed on. They had their children and stuff, so they weaned off. Everyone had their own thing that they were doing, but they were free. It was left up to them to be free or not.
And what was that life like? Were they farmers? Were they?
Yes, they did. They farmed. Now, Andy Canada was the eldest of Allen. Allen Canada was my grandfather. Andy was the eldest, and I have an article on him. What he did, it was during the Civil War time. He would drive oxen to Mexico and bring supplies back for the Confederate. And that was his job. He would be gone, they said it right there, 6 months at a time. But this is what he had to do. He had to go and get supplies. And so that was what he did for the Confederate.
And you have that article that explains that?
Yes.
Okay.
I have it right here.
Yes.
Now this is the picture that I have. You have a copy of it, and this is of Steve and Edna.
You hold that up for everybody to see.
That's of Steve and Edna.
And Steve and Edna,
And they had 11 boys and 4 girls.
and they were the original ones?
The ones that came.
The ones that came from Goliad to Beeville.
No, from
No,
Virginia. They
from
came from
Virginia.
Virginia.
I'm getting them two mixed up.
They came from Virginia.
They came from Virginia with the Coxes, I guess.
Yes, the cops.
Yeah. You said you only had one sibling. Your brother?
I have a brother, but I had a sister. She passed away. She was 21 years older than me, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
One brother, one sister.
And where were you and your family, JoAnna? And you said you had a brother 8 years older.
He passed away in 1982.
And how many children were there?
My mother actually had 8 children, but it was kind of a sad story because she had 6 boys and 2 girls. And she lost 3 boys and a girl, and 3 boys and a girl lived. So I'm number 7 of the 8, and right now there's only 2 of us left. And that's me and my younger brother, and he lives in Florida.
He really did get away from cold winters, didn't he?
Oh, well, he comes back and forth all the time because he'll be here in June because his grandson is graduating from high school in San Antonio, and he'll be back in August because that's when we have the reunion. So he's here probably at least once a year.
What, I know there were a lot of things that we've talked about before, like, you know, the first businesses and things like that. What were some of the professions that, as your ancestors kind of got away from doing all the farming and everything, they owned stores, did they?
Now mine did own a store on the Mineral Highway, and that is where my grandmother, Lucy Canada, she was a teacher, and she held the school there at the store at first. And
Do you remember
it was
approximate years?
No. 1876.
Wow,
It was 1876.
that is great. That's great. And then, what else? Anybody else?
In the old days, well, we had, Mr. Lamas had a
Well,
duck, what it was,
Mr. Lamas Langley had a restaurant across the street, used to sit across the street from the school. It was called the Duck Inn, and he sold barbecue. And then Mr. Reby Tucker, they had a restaurant on the other side of town, which we refer to as out on the hill. I don't know if you ever went there to eat, but they served just about everything in his restaurant. And then there was a we called him Mr. Buster Johnson. He had a restaurant over in Sand Ridge, he and his wife. In fact, my husband used to work there. He was a dishwasher there when he was in high school. And we visited his son, because his son is in a nursing home in San Antonio. And he had 2 twin daughters. One of them was a nurse, and she lives in San Antonio. And the other one, she married a military man, and she lives in Alaska.
Wow.
But they were the only people back during my time that actually owned a business. Now, my uncle, Jetty Lott, he used to be the chef cook at the American Cafe, And my Uncle Lott, he worked for anybody and everybody all over Beeville. He used to work for Hegler's grocery store. And just about everybody, most of my mother's brothers and just her siblings, they did not stay in Beeville. Like I said earlier, my Aunt Noreen, who was a school teacher, she left and she went to El Paso. My Aunt Ina, she got married out of college and she didn't return to Beeville. She went and lived in Omaha, Nebraska. My uncle Lonnie was in the military. He was a lieutenant in the military because he had attended college, and he married a young lady from Alabama, and he lived in Mobile, Alabama, and his grandchildren still live there. His daughter used to come for the reunions. In fact, when we had the dedication for the school, his daughter was here to help unveil the plaque.
One of the things that amazes me is that in times that were hard, that there were quite a few, not only African Americans, but Hispanics and Anglos also, that went to college.
Yeah.
I mean, was college was it not real expensive, or?
Well, I think I can only speak for my family, but for my family, education was very important because, like I said, my grandmother could not read and write. So she wanted her children to be educated. Now, even though they were elderly, when my mother grew up, they couldn't afford to send her to college, but she was a book person. She told me, she said, anything you need to know, you can find out in a book. So I was always kind of quiet, bookworm type.
Yeah.
And I really believed what she said was true because, I mean, anything and everything, and it was amazing. Like when my older brother would come home from college and he would say, Mom, I bet you don't know such and such a thing. And she would rattle off something and he would sit there and he said, where'd you learn that? And she would just look at him and smile. She never said. And the one thing that always stuck with me that she taught me was that you do not let other people define you. She said, you be your own person. You learn everything that you possibly can learn. She said, because when it's in here, nobody can take that away from you. It's yours. And it's yours to use however you choose to use it. And she told me, she said, I hope that when you grow up, you will not have to be a maid or a cook. She said, but if you should have a job cleaning, she said toilets, not bathrooms. She said, if you should have a job where you have to clean toilets, make them shine. And that's what she said.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a secretary. Don't ask me why, but I wanted to be a secretary. So for my 16th birthday, she bought me a typewriter. It took her a year to pay for that typewriter. So I took typing at A.C. Jones. I wanted to go to the secretarial class, but the one thing that happened to me when I signed up for it, I had to go to see the counselor. And he said, JoAnna, you cannot take shorthand. And I said, why not? He said, because in order to complete the course, the last 6 weeks of school, one of the requirements was that you work in an office, and nobody would take me. So they told me that, sorry, you cannot take shorthand. But what I did when my husband was assigned to Fort Belvoir in Virginia, and we lived in Maryland, I went to adult class and I learned the shorthand, and I got a government job and I worked as a secretary. And my last 18 years, almost a little over 18 years of work, were at the Pentagon. And that's where I retired from.
That is fantastic.
So, you know.
What about you, Martha? Did you like have to work while you were going to school, or?
No,
No.
no, I didn't have to work as I was in school. Just went to school, that was the main
Right.
thing. Focus was on school.
Right. Where'd you go?
I went to A.C. Jones is where I graduated from.
Yeah.
I went to Thomas Jefferson, which was a junior high.
Mm-hmm.
When Lott County was closed, I went to Thomas Jefferson, so Thomas Jefferson, and then to A.C.
Mhm.
Jones is where I graduated,
And then
and then to B County,
to B County.
and then I went to A&M, and then I got a job in the summer, and it was called Community Council of B County. And so I was working there, so I was going to night school, and so I had, as being over them as a director, I had to go to different schools. So I ended up going to a lot of universities and stuff, and I was blessed because I did not pay for any of my education. It was paid by, I guess, the government, because they want you to go, and so they paid for you to go.
Yeah,
So that was a good thing.
that's great.
So I'm thankful
That's
for
great.
that.
So probably a lot of other people utilize those things too,
Mhm,
and you know,
That was a blessing. I took
Yes, it
I took
was.
advantage of it.
that was great. And how long have you been a teacher?
Well, I retired in 2013 for 30 years, and now I'm substituting. At the moment, full time till the end of school. They talk about I'm not giving up my retirement. No. So we're working it out. We're working it out.
And how many children do you have?
3,
You have 3.
2 girls and a boy.
And where are they?
I have my son, and one of my oldest daughters is here, and then I have Tanya. She's in Houston. She lives in Houston.
Yeah. And JoAnna?
I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. My oldest daughter works for NASA. From time to time, she's an auditor, so from time to time she has to come to Houston, and usually when she comes to Houston, we'll go and meet her over there. And I have one son who lives in Texas, and he lives in Missouri City. He works for AAA, and my youngest son is an artist, so he doesn't work. He just paints and sells his paintings. And my youngest daughter works for Department of Education with the Guaranteed Student Loan Program.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Do you mind if I ask you about your son, who's the artist?
Oh, yeah, his name is Daryl O'Reilly. And I'm always teasing him about his art because I said he paints almost nude women. And he goes around. In fact, he just returned from Chicago where he did a show. But he goes to Chicago, Pittsburgh, New York, California. He's even been to a show in Austin and down in San Antonio, but he said sales weren't very good in Texas because apparently a lot of Texans don't go in for the type of artwork that he does. In fact, I wouldn't let my grandson go into his studio when he was little. I said, no, you can't go into Uncle D's studio because I don't want you to see that.
One of the other things, because we've talked about cowboys, and I know that there were several African American cowboys that went on cattle drives, and so any of them kin to?
Well, according to my mother and some of her siblings, my grandfather did. But now I can't verify that because I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just what I was told.
Right.
But they said that he went up the trail, as they referred to
Right.
it. But I know that once he retired, all of the sons did farm work and till they decided to leave Beeville because 3 of my uncles went to live in Arizona, and one of them died when he was 17, so he didn't do anything. And of course, I had 3 who stayed in Beeville, and there was Ben Lott. He had a chicken. He used to dress chickens, turkeys, ducks, and whatever. And he had a business, I forgot about that, a couple of blocks over on the corner. And he used to provide chickens for the H-E-B stores and other grocery stores in Beeville before things started coming in on trucks. And like I said, Uncle Si worked for Hagler's, and Uncle Jetty worked at the American Cafe. They were the only ones who remained in Beeville, and my mother. Everybody else, as soon as they got out of school or whatever, they were gone.
Yeah.
And most of them never came back to live here.
What about in your family, Martha?
I don't know of any cowboys.
Yeah.
Could have been, but
Well, I know that some of the Langleys did some cowboy stuff, and but I didn't know if they were part of.
I think what Mr. Lamas's grandfather.
Yes.
Because he was along there with my grandfather. Yeah. But see, my grandfather passed when I was 5 years old.
Okay, let's talk about reunion. I think that, I mean, it's so great. How did it get started? Why did you all decide to start doing that? And
Well, what I was told, and I'm not sure because I was living in Maryland at the time, but they said that Mr. Calvin Heineman, his family used to have a family reunion every year. And so they got together and decided while he was having his family reunion, like Canada should have a family reunion. So that's how it started back in 1981. I think it was. And I have not missed a one since then.
wow.
Yeah, because we came down from Maryland I was here for everyone.
That is fantastic.
Yes, and you get to see all the people that you went to school with and meet their children. Sometimes my children come and it's just, because like one of my cousins came and I was introducing her to some of the girls and boys that I went to school with. And I told her, I said, and she and I started first grade together, and this one fella came up and she said, I know, you all started first grade together. I said, no. I said, he didn't come to Beeville until he was in 3rd grade. She said, I don't believe it. She said, it's somebody you didn't start first grade. And that was, his name was Clarence Johnson. And he lives in Houston now, but they used to live with their mother over in Berkeley. And when their grandmother rather in Berkeley. And they had to come to school here in Beeville. So Clarence was my classmate, and then he had another brother RJ, who was a couple of years younger, and a younger sister, Dorothy, and she was my younger brother's classmate. So they are all here for all the reunions. They come because what I do, and I don't, since I've been back here, I just took it upon myself that everybody I know, and I have their phone number, I will call them up and say, okay, are you coming to the reunion? Because I want to see your face in the place. And they say, oh yeah, we'll be in trouble with you if we don't come. And what, I think about 3 weeks ago, we had to go to a funeral over in Goliad because one of my cousins over there passed. And the Johnsons were there, and RJ came up to me and he said, I bet you don't know who I am. I said, oh, RJ, no, I don't know who you are. I said, where's your brother? He said, you're a mess. I said, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 messes. He said, we'll be there. We'll see you in August. I said, okay.
And Martha, you're the one here. So
Yes.
you
Well,
get to take care of, you and
it's-
Jesse get to take care of the here.
Yeah, it's a happy time. I look forward to seeing everyone. It's just amazing. I hate for it to end once. It's a lot of preparation that we have to do. You
It's
gotta
a
know.
lot of work.
But you know, it's worth it. Just for the time that we get to come
It is.
together
It is.
and be together. It's just a blessing.
Yeah.
And over the years, we have lost so many
Oh,
that we,
yeah.
you know, and we look back and we don't know when it's going to be our last time. So we need to take advantage. As long as we can come together and be together, you know, we need to be together. And we want our children to keep on doing this, you know, once we are gone off the scene.
Yeah.
And see, in this way, if they come to it and see what's going on, and then they'll know how to carry on, you know, after we are gone. And that's what we look forward, you know. to.
About how many do you usually have?
Well, this past time we had it was 200. We had, and then it just kept growing and growing. We exceeded the from years past.
Yeah, we
So
didn't
it's
even
getting-
have enough tables
chairs.
for everybody to be seated because we said, you know, we're going to have more tables and chairs before August.
And we asked them to pre-register, but you know how people are. They wait till they get here, you know, and they expect you to have everything ready for them, you know. But shame on you, you know, if you don't have it done, you know. So we have to prepare for more than what we expect, you know.
And now we're even taking on honorary members now because the lady that my brother's married to, she's from Ohio. But she has become an honorary member of the Lott Canada Alumni Association because she's here all the time with him. And man, he's here, he's cooking, he's doing this, he's doing
And when he's
that.
not here, he's doing this and that.
Oh,
the other,
yeah, he calls
saying
everybody up, and Calvin Heinemann's son, whose name is also Calvin, he's always here. I mean, because he is now our chairman for the whole association. So he's here if somebody passes, he's here. If he's here for a meeting, I mean, he has to drive here from Houston.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was here 2 weeks ago putting windows in at the
Yeah.
American Legion Hall. I saw him.
Yeah.
He was
Talk
replacing
about
windows.
the Legion Hall a little bit, the American Legion Hall. What?
Well, they first built it in the 1950s because there was no place really for black children to go and congregate, you know. So a lot of the men, in fact, the men that started it were like World War II vets, and they decided, hey, we need to have a place where we can meet. And in the beginning, they used to meet at the White American Legion Hall, and at that time, the blacks couldn't be on their own. They had to be associated with the white group. And like, I think the white group was like 274, and so the black group was 274A or something like that. But anyway, Mr. Doherty was instrumental in helping them get the property where the hall is situated. And I know he donated at least $5,000 in cash for them to start that building over there. A lot of people may not know about that, but you know, that happened. And so they built it and they opened it in the early 50s. In fact, when my husband graduated in 55, they had their junior and senior prom over there. But I couldn't attend because I was just, I was in the 9th grade then and that wasn't allowed. But anyway, they had their junior and senior prom over there. And I think the class before him, they held theirs over there also. And it was getting kind of beat up and run down, and then we decided, hey, we ought to repair it because, you know, while my uncle and all of them, Mr. Lamas and Mr. Allen Roop, while they were all living, they took good care of it and saw that everything was kept up, you know. So we said, okay, we need to get together and we need to try to do something. And the surprising thing happened because when Mrs. Welder was our chairman of the B County Historic Commission, she called me one day and she said, JoAnna, she said, Patricia Doherty wants to meet with you. And I said, well, right now I'm in LA. And she said, oh, you are? She said, well, call her and see if you can arrange something. So I called and I told her, I said, right now I'm in LA. She said, you're in LA? I said, yeah. She said, well, I'm gonna be there in a couple of days. She said, can you come to tea? So I told my cousin and my husband, I said, I don't have anything to wear to a tea. I said, all I got is pants and capris and t-shirts and stuff. So my cousin's wife said, girl, we can go shopping. So we went shopping and I got a dress and pantyhose and high heel shoes and everything. And they took me to her place and dropped me off. And I went in there and we had tea. And she wanted to know about the American Legion Hall. And I told her about her father's involvement and also how when they had the first junior and senior prom and everything and how her mother had helped out. And she said, really? She said, I didn't know any of this. So she said, what is it you need now? And I said, well, the floor is sinking and we need to have the floor raised. And she said, do you know how much that is going to cost? And I said, well, we have a few estimates. I said, and the lowest one is for $8,500. She said, oh, okay. And I was there for about 3 hours and we talked and we looked at old photos and we talked and I met her daughter and some other folks and I left. Well, we were here getting ready for the reunion and I got a call and they said, JoAnna, can you go to the Doherty office down in Beeville? Patricia has a package for you. So I said, okay. So I drove down there and when I went in, the lady said, are you JoAnna O'Reilly? And I said, I am. She said, I'm Patricia Doherty's lawyer and I'm supposed to give you this envelope. And she gave it to me. I thanked her and I left. I got home to my mom's house And I opened the envelope. And there was a cashier's check for $10,000 in there. And I just started crying, and my husband, my brother, my cousin, and everybody said, "What is your problem?" I couldn't even speak. I just handed them the check.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't believe this." There were no words. There was nothing. There was just the check and the envelope.
Yeah.
So I was overwhelmed.
So that got you guys kind of up and running, and
Oh yeah, well we had the floor fixed right away, took pictures, and I sent them off because while I was there I met her personal secretary, and she gave me addresses and places to send things because she's here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
And it was pretty good. Everybody was happy, just thrilled. And one other time when she was down here, she invited us to the ranch for Mrs. Wilder was there and some other people. But it was
That's terrific.
it was wonderful.
Do you have any memories of the Legion, the hall, growing up?
Growing up, they used to have record hops, we called them. Used to have those kind of things over there. I remember that. My mother and my other, they had some kind of auxiliary, and they would bake cakes and things and raffle them off to take care of the American Legion Hall. I remember that. The ladies, it was some kind of lady auxiliary. I don't know and they would make cakes, because I remember Mama doing that.
Yeah, my
to make
mother
cakes
did
to raise
Yeah.
money for the American Legion Hall.
That's great.
Is the American Legion Hall still standing?
It is.
It's
Yes.
still
Up and
operating
running.
open? Do y'all have
Yeah,
functions?
we have to. In fact, we hold our meetings there. It's right across over there. Couple
We
of
had our
blocks
grand
from here.
opening with the last reunion we had. That was
Yeah.
our first time back
Yeah.
in.
Mhm.
And what is this old building over in the corner of the lot here?
We don't know. They said somebody told me that it came from either Berkeley or Goliath, said it was condemned or something.
It was moved here.
And they didn't want it wherever it was located, so since they had additional space back there, they moved it here.
Okay. Now, Martha, you had mentioned something was the home ec building?
Where was the home?
The home ec building is the white building right
Okay,
there
that was-
next door that is operated by the credit union now. And that was where we learned sewing and cooking when I was a student here.
And was that the original school building?
No,
Okay.
no, that was separate. They had 4 cook stoves in there and 4 long tables. I don't know if there's a picture, because we also had classes in there, and we had 4 sewing machines. So part of the year we took sewing, the girls took sewing, and part of the year we took cooking.
Yeah.
hmm
And it was a cafeteria.
And then when they desegregated, it became a cafeteria because
That was
Martha's
where we-
auntie used to cook over there, her Aunt Lola. Then it was a cafeteria for the kids who were still grades 1 through 6 who were still going here.
So what classes would y'all have here, other than like the sewing and cooking classes? Reading, writing, arithmetic, and...
Oh
The regular,
yeah, geography, everything.
Science.
The sad thing was, to me the saddest thing was that the books that we had were the books that the white school got rid of. The books came over here, so sometimes we had books that had pages missing, and also when we first integrated, when we started going, like I was an A student over here, when I went over there, I was a C student in the beginning because we were that far behind. And the thing that helped me was the first year they had the principal here, who was Louis Carruthers, who has, since we've been living, moved back here, passed away. I came over one day and I was talking, because he always stayed late, and I was upset, and he said, well, what is the problem? I said, I am so far behind, you know, and I don't think I'm gonna do. I said, and I don't want my mother to see my report card and I don't have A's and B's on. And he said, I tell you what, he said, every day when you get out of school, he said, you come here and I will tutor you. And he did that for the 9 months until summer came and school was out, and then they moved him. I mean, he left Beeville and went to Houston. Somebody else was in charge here. But I came here every day, every afternoon, and we sit right in there and went over the books. He went over the books with me. And I always appreciate, we didn't have to pay him a cent, didn't do anything. In fact, I used to iron for him. I used to iron his shirts. I did that when I was a student here. And he paid me for that. Yeah, when he found out, because like in the summer when I did part-time jobs, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I ironed 8 hours a day, and I made $3 when I was 15 and 16. Yes.
Did you have any experiences like that? That sounded like it was pretty good for you.
I guess I came along at the right time.
At the right time, and the shift happened at the right time.
Yes.
But you were, let's see, how old would you have been in the mid-60s when, you know, when the whole civil rights thing? Did that get your attention? And did you, like, what was that like around here?
And I guess we just live a sheltered life. It didn't really affect us. It didn't bother us, you know. I just wasn't exposed to a lot of things that others even was around, because my parents never let me go out here because I couldn't visit anyone. I stayed at home. You know, I was at school or I was at church. And the kids that we played with, she worked for Amos Welder Sr. That was who we played with. You know, so it was just like, I didn't know things were going on around me.
And I think that's something great about small communities is, because I know Tip and his brothers, the O'Neills, they're playmates.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse,
Of course.
Edward, you know, and the Robinson kids, or, you know, whoever. That was their playmates. So it was, it wasn't as hard a job to integrate here. And at that time, there wasn't really a lot of national news. And so a lot of that kind of...
A lot of things we didn't even know about, things that happened in other states and other places. We may never even hear about it. And just like she was saying with Jesse and Edward, they're my cousins. And I know they used to play with Tip. I mean, Jesse's still friends with them, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just that if you were exposed to certain people, just like when we first integrated, there were some white girls there that I was friendly with. I have never seen them again since I graduated high school. But some of them were very nice. And I tell you, the one girl, and I know she was killed in a plane crash or something, but she used to, when we walked to school because we lived inside the city limits. So at that time, we were not allowed to ride the school bus. And I lived 1 block over from here. A.C. Jones is almost 2 miles from my house. I walked there every morning, and I walked back every afternoon. When it was raining, sometimes my mother would send me and Charles Love, because he lived 2 doors up from me. She would send us to school in a taxi. But then when Charles was playing sports, and a lot of the kids, because like a lot of Hispanics lived on this side of town. So sometimes like they passed us one day and Charles and I were walking. And so they said, "Hey, Slick Man," because they called him Slick. That was his nickname. "Hey, Slick Man, you want to ride?" And he said, "Yeah." And so he started getting in the car, and they said, "Oh, we don't have enough room for her. She can't ride." And so he said, "Well, if she can't ride, I can't ride." He said, "Because we go together." And they said, "Okay, man, she's gonna have to sit on your lap." So that's what we did. They picked us up and they took us to school, you know. But then coming home, I walked home every day. And like the creek she was talking about, I used to have to walk through the creek by myself because I was the only person. Because like Charles and them, they were staying to practice basketball, football, and everything. So I had to come by myself through there every day.
You know, we walked too, and it didn't seem like it was that far. We would just play with each other, you know. It would be a group of us.
And we would be talking
walking,
and making jokes and acting crazy all the way. So, you know, it was just fun. And for me, it was a chance that I got to be with other kids, because over here, like I said, there wasn't a lot, and there was almost no girls. So it was just the fellas, you know. But like Martha was saying, there were certain places I could go, or certain houses I could visit, because like the Davises, Miss Quincy's daughter.
Yes.
Now she and I, we were like sisters, because she had 3 brothers also and no sister. So we were very close, but they lived on the other side of town. Now, if I wanted to visit somebody over there, I could go to Alice's house, but that was the only house I was supposed to go to. And Alice's stepfather, Easterlin, was my father's cousin. And a lot of people in town didn't know that, but Eastland and my father were 2 sisters' children. So they were first cousins. So it was okay for me to go to their house. But I didn't go to Martha's house, or I didn't go to Clara's house. Sometimes I went to Clara's house, but I wasn't supposed to be there. But I had to pass by Clara's house to get to Alice's house.
Yeah.
It's a new day. It's things, and that was the way. You know, you play with your cousins. You
Yes.
know,
That's right.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And you know, I always longed for, because they had the projects over here, and it was, you know, a lot of kids that I went to school with, but I could not play with them. If I didn't play with them in school, that was it.
Yeah.
When you went home, it was a new day.
Sure.
What's it like with the kids here now?
They everywhere.
They
don't have
a place.
you know, they just, I don't know, they kind of do whatever they want to do.
Are they playing
And those-
like y'all did, or?
No, not the same. Everything is electronics. That's if you leave the electronics, you don't. They don't want to play outside at all.
Oh no.
And you have to.
No.
They'll tell you quick that they don't have anything to play with, but they have all these games and stuff. They want something new. Everything's electronics.
I mean, there's no shooting marbles, flying kites, spinning tops, playing hide and seek. That kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. That's out. And now the kids are so, just like when we grew up, I didn't even think about getting in trouble, because if I did, whatever grown-up saw you was gonna spank you. Then she was gonna tell your parents, and you were gonna get another spanking. So I didn't get in trouble. I mean, I was what they call a Miss Goody Two Shoes, because I said, oh no, I don't want my mother to find out I
understand
did
so
that.
much.
I did no, I'm not doing that. And right now to this day, my mother passed in 2000, and I'm 77 years old. So if I think about something and it's a little on the shady side, I say, now, okay, if my mother found out that I did that, would she be ashamed of me? And my answer to that is yes. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
So you think kids now, they have a reference like that in their head?
No. Now they, because sometimes you see them and their mother, their grandmother, and great grandmother be telling them, don't do such and such a thing, and they go and do it anyway. Because we had like this little girl at our church. She went up, she raised the lid to the piano, and she was getting ready to play on the piano. Now her great grandmother is sitting out there, and she said, don't touch that piano. And she went plink. And I stood up and I said, didn't your grandmother tell you not to touch that piano? And she looked at me and put her head down, and she went and sat down. Because I don't play. Why couldn't she do that when her grandmother spoke to her? Because, I mean, you have no control.
How do you think they're going to grow up?
Crazy. Into this, that. I mean, why there's so much crime, there's so many teenagers doing this, they're shooting each other, everybody's got a gun. Why? Because they can do what they want, and there's no answering to anybody for this, that, or the other thing. Whereas in our day, that didn't happen. Because like I said, your neighbor would spank you, then your mother would spank you, and maybe your father too. So you didn't do that.
They don't have consequences anymore.
No.
Their actions. And
There's no consequences for their actions.
The legal rights, they quickly just say they'll call Department of Human Resources on you, you know, if you touch it. You can't spank me, you can't tell me anything. And they'll tell you quick. I know in school you can't tell me anything. They know your hands are tied because it's out there.
I had my niece, her daughter told her, because when she said, I'm gonna spank you if you and she said, if you spank me, I'm gonna call the police. So my niece said, you better start dialing, because I'm finna tear your hind parts out. And she did call the police.
She did?
Yeah, and they came. They put her on probation for spanking her own child. Yeah.
How's that going to end up?
I said, my dad wouldn't have ever got out of jail.
I hear the same. My dad didn't spank much, but that mama, oh Lord have mercy.
Now my mother didn't usually. And she spanked my brother because he did something every day. But I mean, he was just that kind of kid, believe me. But my mother, she would just look at you, and I could not stand to see that hurt look in her eyes. So I said, okay, I'm not doing that, you know. But my brother, he'd do something, and then he'd go. And mother would be getting the strap, and he said, oh, Sister Neely, please don't hit me with that strap, because you know it's gonna hurt, and I'm gonna be crying, and mother would be laughing so hard. Sometimes she couldn't make it. Believe it or not, when we had one of the reunions, I don't know if you ever met Miss Alma Hampton from Skidmore.
I have not.
Okay, she used to be one of the teachers here. She used to spank my brother every day, because at that time, teachers could give you a spanking. When they had the reunion, my brother went to her and he said, Miss Alma, I just want to thank you for spanking me. He He said, because that made me a better man. He did.
Which one was that?
Bessie.
About Bessie was
Yeah. Every day he got into trouble. And at church he would have us cracking up laughing. We'd be sitting there in junior choir and he would be making jokes.
I can believe it.
My mother was the pianist at the church. She kept a wire coat hanger. And you can ask anybody who was in the junior choir with us and they will verify. She kept a wire coat hanger by the piano bench. And she made my brother sit in that seat that was right next to her. And when everybody started giggling, he would be sitting there like this. And she would pick up that hanger and give him 3 whacks on the leg with it. And he'd be going, I used to tell him, I said, please, don't do anything in church. And he'd look at me and go, anybody who knows him will verify. And almost everybody in Beeville knows him because you can say, oh, my brother is James Martin. And they say, oh, we don't know him. I said, do you know Bessie? And they said, yeah. I'm gonna tell you what, two weeks ago, Carl and I were in line at Elders Market to get lunch. And this guy came up to me and he was looking at me and then he got this close and he said, are you Bessie's sister? And I said, yes. He said, tell Bessie Joe Montes said hello. I said, okay. He said, yeah, he and I were good friends. We used to play golf together. He said, when is he coming to Beeville? I said, he'll be here in August. He said, don't forget to tell him. So when I got home that night, I called him. I said, do you know a fella named Joe Montes? Yeah, I know Joe. I said, he said to tell you to call him when you get here in August. And he started laughing. I have another story about my brother, which is crazy. When my mother passed, I could not find the original of her will. In order to have the will probated, you must have the original, and I had a copy. I had torn up that house, looked under the bed, in every cupboard, in every cabinet, everywhere. I couldn't find it. But she had a box of music up in the top of the closet. I had not looked in that box. But Carl's sister plays the piano at her church, and one day my little light bulb came on and said, well, maybe she would like the sheet music. So I took the box down. The will was laying right on top in the box. But over 5 years it passed. So I said, oh, I'm in trouble. So they said, oh, you gotta have a lawyer and everything. So I hired Mr. Warner. And we had a meeting and he said, I'm gonna schedule for us to go before the judge. He said, when he asks you this, you say that. When he asks you that, you say that. I said, okay. So we get in there, and at that time, Martinez was the judge. So he opens the will and he starts reading. And he's halfway down the first page. And he said, Martin. He said, I used to go to school with a guy named Martin. He said, we used to shoot hooky together. He said, but his name wasn't James. I said, was his name Bessie? He said, yeah. He said, you Bessie's sister? I said, yes, sir, I am. He took that will, he flipped over to that last page, signed his name on it, went in his desk drawer and took out 2 cards. He said, here's a card for you, and here's a card for Batsy. He said, next time he come to Beeville, tell him I said, call me.
He can.
I said, now, I done paid $1,200 for this. Just like that. He signed his name on that thing, and that was the end of that. He didn't ask me any questions at all. Nothing.
Who was the guy?
Martinez, and they called
County
Jimmy
judge at
Martinez.
the time, Jimmy Martinez.
So I said, Lord help me.
You know, those kids that were all the same age and
Yeah.
played sports together
Yeah.
and all
Yeah, they
that.
did. They
Well,
did.
anybody make you laugh like that, you can't forget them.
Yeah.
Watch the
He's
kids
still
get whipped
crazy.
every day. You can't forget a kid like that.
He's still crazy. He's still crazy like that. Yeah. And he's in his 70s and he's still crazy.
You do
Well,
something
that's
bad
funny.
every day.
Oh, when we were growing up, oh God.
Tell me a good Bassy story. Craziest Bassy story you know.
Oh God. I can't.
Come on.
He's gonna kill me.
That must be the one. Yeah, we're going. This has to go down in history now.
I don't know. I can't, not right now because you said that I can't think.
Can't do it? Oh, that's got to be the one.
I can't think of one.
You're about to.
That's one of those. I think I've said enough.
I mean, really nothing. Nothing is
Well,
good.
while you're thinking about that, what's that picture you have there, Martha?
These are my great grandparents. This is Steve and Edna Canada.
Uh-huh. And can you tell me about them?
Steve and Edna was the first black to sell in B County.
Excuse me?
They were the first African Americans to sell in B County.
To sell.
To sell in B County. They were brought here
They were
from
slaves.
Virginia. Yes, as slaves. By Dr. George Cox.
And okay. And so when this photograph was taken, what is this gentleman's name?
On the picture,
Yeah,
Steve Canada.
Steve Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And how old would he be in this photograph? He would be a freedman because
Yeah,
not
they
young.
were brought here as slaves in 1857, so I don't know the year that this picture was taken.
okay. And so how many generations back would this be? I was trying to figure that out.
3,
Mm-hmm.
4, you might.
More than that.
Great-grandfather.
And my grandfather was
Great-great.
Allen.
Father Allen. And then your mother.
And then you.
And then you.
4.
4
Right.
generations.
Ooh, it's 4 generations. Oops. Okay. It's amazing all that. So who would have taken that picture, you think?
I don't know. It's,
That would be that's amazing that got to happen.
It's just
Has it always been in that frame? Or
Yes, it has.
That's the one you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
so
I have
fragile.
another one with the mother and my grandmother and her mother and sisters and brothers.
Can you tell us more of a story about them? Because that's really, I mean, no? Okay.
They were before my time.
Yeah.
So was it rare or was it pretty common that the owners or masters or whatever they call them would be good to the slaves and
I don't know. They just said that he was good.
There's some were and some weren't.
Yeah.
It's what?
Some were and some weren't.
Yeah. And so when they were freed, they'd pay them, obviously, to stay.
Yeah, they.
If they wanted to stay, then they would get paid for their work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear any kind of like what the attitude would have been after several generations of slavery, and then all of a sudden you're set free? It's like, would you know how to do that? I mean, I know
What to
A
do.
lot of them didn't. That's why they stayed, because they had no idea what to do, because all decisions had been made for them. They didn't have to do anything basically on their own except get up and go to work. Mhm.
So your parents, did they talk about those times or any of this kind of situation? Just, y'all were moving forward.
No,
really.
not usually. The only thing that I know was like my grandfather, there were 4 siblings, and like I said, his sister was married to Mr. Allen. She was the oldest, and then my grandfather, and then there was another boy and a girl after him. Now, the girl, she moved to California, and I think she only came back here like one time for a visit. But my grandfather's brother, what they said about him was that he went north, and when he went north, he did not say he was a black man, because my grandfather looked almost like you, except big, tall and big, very light skin, blue eyes, and that's his sister on that picture up there at the top.
Oh, wow.
And the only thing that I know is what I found out when I did the research, family research, and it said they were mulatto, which means they were half black and half white. So I met my grandfather's brother one time in 1945 when my grandfather got sick. His brother came to Beeville, but when he came to Beeville to my grandparents' house, which no longer exists because they tore the house down, he would not sit on the front porch. We had a glider on the front porch. He would only sit on the back porch. He didn't want anybody to see him at those black people's house, they said. So when my grandfather died, he did not come back for the funeral. So we never saw him again. And when I did the research, I could not find any information on him at all. So I'm assuming that when he went north, he changed his name, everything. So we know nothing.
So he assumed a white identity, basically?
Yes.
Wow.
How far back have you traced your ancestry?
Only back to the 1870s when my grandfather was 8 years old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the original, I'm confused. The original lots, were they white?
They were owned by a white man.
And that
they-
white man's name
see,
was
what-
Lott?
Last name
So
was
they
Lott.
assumed that name?
Yes.
I see, that's what I...
Because that's what happened
common?
when because black people didn't have last names. Slaves didn't have last names. So you took your master's last name. So what they did when slavery time ended and they left the plantation or whatever, then my grandfather became Moses Jackson Lott. Okay. On the paper, the census thing from 1870, it has the mother's name and the children's name, but there's no father's name listed. Okay, and you can't go back to Goliad County or to Goliad City to find out anything, because at that time they had an old wooden courthouse. And when I was told the old wooden courthouse burned down, and all the records that were in that courthouse no longer exist.
Yeah.
So that's the end of it.
Huh. So yeah, there's no history.
No.
Does
You
McLaren
can't
have
find-
any of that stuff? Anything that was existed or before that was somewhere else? Or no?
No, all of that stuff is usually at the courthouses, you know, and people weren't interested in going and looking all
No.
that up.
Mm-mm.
And so B County lost a lot of records one time when I remember if the they kept them in the basements. If it flooded or if there was some kind of fire, I don't remember, but we lost a lot of records. And usually they're not anywhere else. If they're not in a family Bible somewhere,
Yeah.
then you don't have them.
And see, we were trying to find out because, like my grandfather and them, they came to Beeville, to B County. Then there were Lotts in Refugio. There are Lotts in Goliad. There are Lotts in Runge. And we were trying to find out if we all related. But we can't because
No record.
And they're all
but
different.
they all, what I was told, they all originated in Goliad.
Yeah.
So you want to tell me that all these black people who originated in Goliad on this plantation are not related to each other?
Yeah, you would think they would be.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Canada. Similar story. So any Canadas, like white Canadas left?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because that group came from Virginia.
Yeah, you had said that.
West
Yeah.
Virginia or something. And so they probably took that Canada name up
From
there.
Virginia.
Yes,
So
they
if
did.
there were Canadas, they would have to go back probably to Virginia
Yeah.
and do some research.
So they came here, that couple came here as slaves, and weren't they brought by somebody?
Dr. George Cox.
They would,
They bought them in Virginia and brought them here.
yeah.
I see.
They probably owned a plantation or something or farm, at least
So they
in
bought-
Virginia. And when they moved down here, they brought them with them.
And they had their name, they had already had a last name, Canada. So was that a rare thing that a slave would have a last name that was from their former,
They just used the name of the
where they came
owner.
from?
Mhm.
So they wouldn't change it to Cox or anything like that? I see.
No, if they already had a name,
Okay.
they would keep that.
And it was it possible to buy your freedom? I had heard.
It was, but most of the time it didn't happen because you couldn't get the money, you couldn't earn the money to purchase your freedom because that would be like hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars depending on what you look like. Because when I read a lot of books about slaves and slavery time. Okay, the bigger you were in stature, the more money you could get from a sale.
You're strong. You do more work.
Because you were strong and healthy, big. Because some of the books you read, okay, say the slave originally came from Africa. In Africa, you have some men who are very tall in stature, and you have some who are small, okay? Sometimes, and this sounds disgusting, but sometimes sons were forced to have sex with their mothers, their sisters, because you could produce a bigger specimen.
Yeah.
The bigger specimen brought more money at the auction. So that's the way it happened. Okay, just like in my family, Batsy. Batsy is 6'2". Batsy's nickname, what my mother called Batsy, is Shorty. Now you can imagine you calling a man who's 6'2" shorty. Why? Because my other brother was 6'3". Another brother was 6'6". So Betsy was shorty.
You come up with a story of him yet?
No, I didn't.
He'll be here in a couple of weeks.
You got a story of him?
No.
Because see, Carl didn't live here all the time because,
But Carl, I bet you've heard every single story.
oh Lord,
You
he
got a
knows
good one?
Bass is crazy.
Reminder of one, Carl. I know you got one in your pocket.
You got it all.
It's just so I can't.
Don't drive yourself crazy.
Nothing,
Be like Betsy.
Nothing is. What you need to do probably is get some of those guys that he used to hang out with.
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell. I can think of one crazy, and he's gonna kill me probably if he knows I told this. But you know, a long time ago, how kind of like in the middle of the night, bread trucks, they used to deliver bread and pastries and everything to restaurants. So in the middle of the night, I don't know why Betsy was downtown, but they were delivering bread to the American Cafe where my uncle was the chef. So the guy goes into the restaurant to take these trays of bread and goods, but he does not lock the truck. Betsy comes along and he helps himself to a whole tray of donuts. We live at least my mother's house was 3 or 4 blocks from downtown. He knew he couldn't take the donuts home because mother would have whooped his behind and made him take the donuts back. So he took the donuts to my future sister-in-law's house. She wasn't my sister-in-law at that. He took the donuts to Anna's house. Anna used to live over in the projects. He took them over there and he told her, he said, nobody eats any of my donuts. Tray and all. That's the best Bassy story.
Oh, come on. I'm waiting for the punchline.
I mean, he stole the whole tray of donuts and left town and walked off from downtown
Holding that thing. Nobody.
all the way over here in the middle of the damn night. And Anna had to let him in with that tray of donuts.
She didn't even get any? And she married him?
No, she married my older brother. Yeah,
How did Betsy get that name? Betsy.
crazy. You know,
Well,
bat,
that's what I figured, but
like a bat.
Yeah.
He was crazy.
yeah,
From the time he learned how to talk, he was crazy.
McKinley Lott.
that's my
That's what we all
hope
looking
and
for.
prayer too. The exact same thing. That somebody will pick up the mantle
Yes.
and carry it forward. So.
Maybe they can turn all this into a computer game somehow.
Yeah.
Because like my children, they lived here 1 year, and that was when my husband went to Vietnam. We stayed here for 1 year, but they were real small. In fact, my youngest son was 2. So all they know about Beeville is coming back and forth to visit grandmother, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it.
All these little towns. You know, everybody wants to leave and go to the city now.
Exactly.
So farming job, you know, nobody wants to do that stuff anymore, do they?
And see, I can't say anything because when I grew up, I wanted to go. I said, oh man, I can't wait. And when I left Beeville, I still like going places. Yeah, I've been to all 50 states. I've been to a bunch of foreign countries. In January, I'm going to Panama because we've never been there before. I mean, our 50th anniversary, we went to we went to Europe. We went to Croatia. We went all that Spain. You know, really, and toured the Vatican. You know, and I feel like there are still places that I would like to go and see. And I want to do that. But Beeville's still my home.
Mm-hmm.
My heart is still here. I come here every Sunday and go to church. There's a church that is a United Methodist church 6 miles from my house in Livonia.
So you still come here?
Every Sunday I'm over there at Jones Chapel. Why? Because 130 years ago, my grandfather built that church. And I'm here. I have to drive 75 miles to get here, 75 miles to get back home, but I am here. The only time I'm not here is when I go to visit my children. Every other Sunday, I am here, the good Lord willing. And so far, I haven't missed a reunion, because even when we were still living in Maryland, I flew here. Yeah.
Every Sunday?
No,
For
for
the
reunion.
Every 2 years for the reunion. All right, but when my mother was still living, I flew here every 3 months. Yes, sir.
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
I have to say, Miss O'Reilly, for a person who doesn't talk much, you've done a beautiful job today.
Like I say, I have to get myself psyched up. Once I'm psyched up, I can go. The only other time that I talk a lot is if I have 2 drinks. And I'm not a drinker. When I was working, they used to laugh at me because my boss was Jewish. And he used to say, "Don't buy J.O. any drinks." And everybody would say, "Would you like
Yeah.
and they would set them in front, and I would never have more than 2. But the funniest thing happened. Somebody got slick and they bought me a margarita like this. And I drank the whole thing. I got back to the Pentagon after the luncheon. My boss looked at me. He said, "J.O., are you okay?" Because all he ever called me was J.O. I said, "Don't ask me to type anything, file anything, do anything, because I'm not doing it." And he started laughing. And at that time, when my daughter first got out of college, she worked for DIA also, but in a different building over on Bowling Air Force Base. So he picked up the phone and he said, "Cheryl, come get your mama."
Oh, man.
He sent me home.
Mark, is there anything else that you'd like to tell, like the people of the future that'll see this thing in 50 years?
Well, all I'm hoping, like since we've moved back to Texas, my husband did the write-up for the markers, and for the one out here at the school, the one at the American Legion Hall, the one at the cemetery, and the one that's at the Methodist Church. But none of our children live in Beeville. They've only ever visited because this is where their grandmothers were. But what I'm hoping is that somewhere, some child even, I mean, if it's not mine, some child will develop an interest in the heritage enough to want to see it preserved, enough to come back here from time to time and see that the buildings are kept up, that that stays open, and that people can come in and look at the things and say, oh, well, that's my great grandmother, or that's my great grandfather, and they grew up here, you know. Because to me, I've always said Beeville was my home. And one thing I found when Carl was still in the military and we were still traveling around, a lot of people that we met, they never said they were from a small town. If you met somebody from Texas, they were from Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, or Fort Worth. I never said I was from there. I'm from Beeville. Beeville is my home. Beeville is in my heart. I mean, I grew up here. This is my community. I love this town. And there are a lot of good people here. And I would like for my children to know that. I would like for them to feel a sense of pride when they drive into B County and say, oh, my grandparents were raised here. My parents were raised here. This is a part of me. That's all I would like. And if I can do anything to make that happen, I'm willing to do that.